Imagine being ordered to march straight into a hail of gunfire. No running, no dodging, just walking shoulder to shoulder toward certain death. Why would any soldier do this? Why would any commander order it? The truth is, those straight lines of doomed men weren't madness, they were mathematics. A brutal calculation where standing still was safer than running, where tight formations were the only shield against the scythe of cavalry and the fog of war. This is the terrifying logic that sent thousands to their deaths in perfect formation, and why abandoning those lines would have been even deadlier. The Civil War stands at the crossroads between ancient combat and modern warfare, where courage wasn't measured in heroics, but in holding your place in line while men fell around you. Today, we'll uncover why stand and die wasn't just an order, it was the only option. Before we continue, please like and subscribe to support the community. Why did Civil War soldiers fight in tight formations? The reasons go deeper than many realize. Despite advancements in weaponry, both Union and Confederate armies relied on linear tactics during the American Civil War, a factor that led to staggering casualties and cemented its place as the bloodiest conflict in U.S. history. The use of orderly lines in battle was deeply rooted in European military tradition, stretching back centuries. From Alexander the Great's tightly packed phalanxes to the methodical ranks of Roman soldiers and the shield walls of medieval armies, structured formations were the norm in pitched battles. When firearms entered warfare, troops initially formed dense squares, blending pikemen and musketeers for mobility and all-around defense. The rise of the bayonet eventually made pikes obsolete, solidifying the dominance of ranged infantry. Yet even in the late 18th century, older combat styles lingered. Smoothbore muskets were hardly more accurate or long-ranged than the slings and bows they replaced. Take the famous Brown Bess. Its effective range was only about 100 yards, 91 meters. Soldiers still relied on blades, bayonets, and lances for close-quarters fighting. However, tactical refinements showed that thinner, elongated lines outperformed deep columns, allowing more men to fire at once. Formations shrank from 8 rows deep to just 2 or 3. Any deeper made it impossible for rear ranks to shoot safely. The inaccuracy of muskets also made volley fire essential. Firing an entire line's weapons at once created a deadly hail of bullets, increasing the odds of hitting the enemy. As a result, armies drilled relentlessly to speed up reloading and firing. Often, victory went to the side that could unleash the most shots in the shortest time. A unit firing 4 volleys per minute had a clear advantage over one managing only 2 or 3. Reloading required soldiers to stand upright to pour powder down the barrel, and tight spacing ensured maximum firepower by keeping muskets concentrated. Battles often became psychological contests, each side waiting for the other to crumble under fire. A well-timed volley could break enemy morale, followed by a bayonet charge to scatter them. While these formations were tactically sound, they placed immense strain on soldiers forced to stand shoulder to shoulder under fire. So why did they hold their ground? In Europe's most disciplined armies, troops faced brutal training and harsh punishments for disobedience. The Prussians were notorious for their severity, using methods like forcing offenders to run a gauntlet of beating soldiers. George Washington, too, recognized the importance of strict discipline and trained officers. He famously distrusted militia forces, comparing reliance on them to leaning on a broken staff. Washington also feared panic spread, writing that militia behavior often demoralized regular troops, whose officers were rarely skilled enough to compensate. Another key: a solid, unbroken line of bayonets created a wall of steel that discouraged cavalry charges. Horses would not willingly impale themselves. While vulnerable to attacks from the sides or rear, disciplined infantry could quickly reorganize into defensive squares, a tactic the British used to devastating effect against Marshal Ney's cavalry at Waterloo. However, this advantage came at a cost. Tight formations made troops easier targets for artillery. For centuries, cannon fire was imprecise enough that commanders considered this an acceptable risk. Yet fighting in lines provided another crucial advantage. It allowed large numbers of soldiers to move as a single, coordinated unit across the battlefield. Without this structure, men could easily become lost or scattered. Musket volleys produced thick clouds of smoke, obscuring vision after just a few shots. Staying in formation helped soldiers recognize their comrades, maintaining unit cohesion. In an era where commands were relayed only by shouts, drum beats, and flags, orderly ranks were essential to prevent chaos. If an attacking force broke apart, leadership could collapse entirely, leaving troops unable to mount an effective defense or press an assault. Though line infantry dominated warfare, not all fighting followed this pattern. Irregular tactics, like guerrilla warfare, had long been used, especially in conflicts such as the French and Indian War. North America's dense forests and rough terrain, unlike Europe's open plains, made hit-and-run tactics far more effective. European armies also employed light infantry, troops trained to fight in loose formations, using cover to harass the enemy and protect the main battle lines. However, if cavalry threatened them, these skirmishers would either rush to form tight defensive ranks or retreat to the safety of friendly lines or uneven ground. The introduction of more accurate firearms, like the Minié ball, intensified the deadliness of linear warfare. This became horrifyingly clear during the American Civil War, where armies increasingly dug trenches during sieges like those at Atlanta, Vicksburg, and Petersburg. These new weapons could also break up cavalry charges at longer ranges, reducing the dominance of both massed infantry and horsemen. Despite these changes, linear tactics lingered into World War I's early battles, contributing to the conflict's devastating initial casualties. Only the widespread adoption of breech-loading rifles, machine guns, and modern artillery finally rendered close-order formations obsolete. To modernize, the idea of rows of men standing in the open, trading volleys, seems irrational, yet given the limitations of their time, it was the most effective way to fight. If better tactics had been available, generals wouldn't have stubbornly clung to formations that sacrificed lives for battlefield control. The death of line warfare came not from poor strategy, but from the Industrial Revolution's relentless march, its machines birthing deadlier tools of destruction. War, ever adaptive, mutated beyond recognition after the First World War, becoming something far more familiar to us today. So when you see those haunting images, rows of men standing helplessly in the open, don't mistake it for madness. It was calculation. It was fear mastered. It was the grim, unavoidable arithmetic of their weapons and the dangers they confronted. To hold position in that orchestrated nightmare required a courage most can't comprehend. They fought shoulder to shoulder not out of ignorance, but because it was their sole defense against cavalry slaughter, the confusion of battle, and the paralyzing dread of the killing field. It was the least terrible solution to an unspeakable problem. Their era required unity in the storm of chaos. Ours demands fragmentation. Their bravery was defined by standing firm, ours, maybe, by scattering. But ask yourself this: could you have stood there, reloading mechanically through the smoke, watching comrades drop, knowing the ground might shake with charging horsemen at any moment? Could you have advanced into that bristling thicket of steel? The Industrial Revolution didn't merely alter warfare, it redefined valor. The Civil War soldier, frozen in his rigid rank, straddles the edge of that transformation, a testament to progress's ghastly price and the sobering reality that war always mirrors the cruel constraints of its age. Their formations have vanished, but the shadow they left, that remains. And one day, what truths of our own wars will future generations struggle to understand?